Good afternoon. I'm Hewitt Shaw, the President of the Board of Directors of the City Club of Cleveland, and it's my honor to welcome you to our Friday Forum today, and it's my special honor to introduce to you today's speaker, the Reverend Hilton Smith, the recently elected President of the Cleveland chapter of the NAACP, and also, notably, a former member of the Board of Directors of the City Club. He is the NAACP-Cleveland chapter's first new president in the past 20 years. Like the City Club of Cleveland, the Cleveland chapter of the NAACP celebrated its 100th anniversary in 2012, with its founding in 1912 being only 3 years after the founding of the national organization. Reverend Smith has the honor of being elected as the president of the Cleveland chapter during its centennial year. As I'm sure all of you know, the NAACP is the nation's oldest, largest, and most widely recognized grassroots-based civil rights organization. Its more than 500,000 members and supporters throughout the United States and the world are the premier advocates for civil rights, for communities, and campaigning for equal opportunity and conducting voter registration throughout our various communities. The Cleveland Branch, as I mentioned, established in 1912, was established with the goal of improving the political, educational, social, and economic status of minority groups, to eliminate racial prejudice, to keep the public aware of the adverse effects of racial discrimination, and to take lawful action to secure its elimination. Over the years, the Cleveland Branch of the NAACP has helped those in the community who are without any other means of assistance through a variety of programs and services. As the newly elected president, Reverend Smith has stated that he will continue a century-long legacy of improving the political, educational, social, and economic status of minority groups throughout Cleveland. Upon assuming his new role as president on January 1, Reverend Smith outlined initiatives he plans to pursue during his 2-year term, including a membership drive that will attract new members and young professionals to become active within the organization, economic development, and continuous improvement to the social and educational systems. Reverend Smith is also a senior vice president of corporate and community affairs at Turner Construction Company. In this position, he has helped thousands of women and minorities start their businesses through a series of business development programs. Reverend Smith has also served on many prominent community boards throughout Northeast Ohio and nationally, and as if he hasn't enough to do already, as I kidded him at lunch, it seems like to me he has 3 full-time jobs. He is also an associate pastor at the Greater Abyssinia Baptist Church here in Cleveland. So with all of those credentials and all of that experience, and in his new position, I'm delighted to introduce to you today Reverend Hilton Smith.
Thank you, Hill. Appreciate it. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. It is indeed a pleasure for me to be here. I've got some good reinforcement here with me today. I've got my attorney here if something happens and it's not too right. I got my best friend, Commissioner Leonard Jackson, here to help me out. I got my son, Jacques, here. And if anything really goes wrong, I got my pastor here to pray for us all, Dr. E.T. Cavins. And so we are delighted to be at the City Club. As was stated, I have been a member of the City Club for many, many years. I served as program chair in my stint as a board member of the City Club, and I'll tell you how far back that was. I was program chair when a gentleman came here that was head of the CIA. His name was George W. Bush. I was here when a fella came here to talk about the Southern Christian Leadership Conference as its new chair, Dr. Ralph David Abernathy. I was here when Rena Bloomberg became the first woman to become a member of the board of the City Club. She and I were actually appointed at the same time. I was here when a fella came here, was standing outside the lobby, and he introduced himself to me. He says, "Hi, my name is Jimmy Carter, and I want to be president." The years really passed. I'm glad I shook his hand, because that day nobody thought he had a ghost of a chance. So I was the first president that I met and shook hands with. I remember when President Obama said that he was going to run. I was at a meeting in Washington, and he came in and he said, "I'd like to say a few words, but I want to say that I am going to run for president." Everybody said, "Yeah, right." And he couldn't get too many people to shake his hand back then. But look at him now. So time brings about a change. I thank God for this opportunity, and I thank God for each of you. I thank God for the opportunity to become president of the Cleveland branch of the NAACP. Let me recognize Attorney George Forbes. Attorney Forbes was at the helm of this organization for 20 years. I can assure you that I will not be here for 20 years. George is legendary in our city on many fronts, and he led this branch for all of these years. And we wish him goodness as he has retired from this particular branch. I want to say a few words today about the NAACP and its founding and where we are. It's only fitting that we are here today because we're in the midst of the 50th anniversary of the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, where 4 little girls were killed. We're on the cusp of the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington, where many of us look back to see all of those courageous souls that stood there and marched. And as an 11th grader at the time, listened on radio, sitting in my counselor's office, wondering if equal opportunities would ever come, would the nation see some change? And so I set out to join the NAACP. My father was a member when he was a first sergeant in the U.S. Army, and I saw him fight for equality for those that were in his division. And he always said that we've got to support civil rights. And so I learned that from him and thus joined the NAACP. The NAACP was founded by some old courageous blacks and whites, those that saw in the state of Indiana back in the early 1900s that lynchings should stop. They came together, and in 1909, the Cleveland branch of the NAACP was born. The national of the NAACP was born, and a few years later, the Cleveland branch came into being. The Cleveland NAACP, 100 years old, stands on the shoulders of Ms. M. Pearl Mitchell, the Gorman sisters, Mr. Charles P. Lucas Sr., Congressman Stokes, Mayor Stokes, Attorney Russell Adrian, Ms. Debbie Sweet, Ms. Margaret Potter, Ms. Odessa Salvant, and the father of Senator George Voinovich, who was an early member and a long-standing member and a life member of the NAACP. And I mention all of those names, some you know, some that you don't know. But persons that stood up and stepped out to seek to preserve equality in the city, in Greater Cleveland, in the state, and indeed the nation. I'm excited of the new board of directors for the NAACP. And I would like the members of our board to stand and be recognized. These outstanding citizens in our community, that's not looking for fanfare, but looking out for the welfare of Greater Cleveland. And I salute them for having the wherewithal to run for the board and having to hear the plea from me to be appointed to the board. And I thank them all. And yes, we have a new executive director, Ms. Sheila Wright. Ms. Sheila Wright, would you please stand, our new executive director. Ms. Wright is an attorney in the city, formerly worked for Judge Pianca in the housing court, and is now off and running. It seems as if she has not been here for 2 weeks, but 2 years already, with all the things that she has done and is proposing to do for our branch. And we need to wrap our arms around her and give her the kind of support that she will richly deserve as our new executive director. Thank you, Ms. Wright. The NAACP. Why the NAACP? Well, there are citizens who are standing on the outskirts of hope. Citizens that have seen dark sides of yesterday and have no hope for brighter tomorrows. We must be there for them. There are families that have existed over the years that need our help. There are families that have experienced supreme tragedies. The Griffins and Williams families have reached out and sought comfort from the NAACP, and we have wrapped our arms around them and embraced their tragic moments. The families that experienced the Imperial Avenue tragedies continue to need comfort and our prayers. Why the NAACP? When a young child, 3 years old, that somebody killed and placed in a trash bin and will not see the hope of life. A young lady that needs mental health help. That's why the NAACP. Why the NAACP is when a student informed me that he felt safe in the arms of school officials while he's in school, but didn't know whether he would be back tomorrow because of the violence throughout the city. Why the NAACP is when I talk to young people and they are actually planning their own funerals. Why the NAACP? Because young professionals, students and adults alike, need to trace the history of the organization and feel the strong sense of value placed on making ways out of no way, to see that faith in God carried so many through the faces of dogs that bit them. Experienced the water pressure from water hoses. Experienced severe beatings and heard the motto, segregation now, segregation forever. Just this week, in one of the editions of the New York Daily News, there was an article entitled, "The Tower of Hate," at the World Trade Center, which is under construction. And in that article, it showed the devastating graffiti about blacks, about Latinos, about women, about Jews, and the Irish. Yes, we need organizations like the NAACP. We know that the authors of these uneducated words were the few and not the many, who stand for a better world environment, a better society, better racial and cultural harmony, and a better sense of America, a better sense of the world. Yes, those towers of hate and those comments were of the few. Thank God it wasn't the many. And we pray that we can work with the few and that they will succumb to badness and live up to victory. Because after all, we're all God's children. As working people, we must stand together for what is right, what is fair, and what is just. The world is depending on each of us. Young people, young professionals, young students are depending on us to form a perfect union and take Cleveland and Greater Cleveland to higher heights. In the forefront of the Cleveland branch of the NAACP is coalition building, working together with organizations throughout our city, Greater Cleveland, the county, and the state to correct wrongs and to instill love. Yes, we've got a lot of work to do. I gave a speech last week in Atlanta, and the subject was, are we there yet? Oh, no, we're not there yet. We're not there yet because the United States ranks 18th in math in the world. The United States ranks 32nd in education in the world. And you know the wide spread between minorities and whites as far as the education of our young people is concerned. No, we're not there yet. We're not there yet when it comes to economic development. We know that small businesses employ 6% of the people in America. We need to stabilize small businesses. We need to stabilize minority and women-owned businesses that are legitimate and work with them so that they can see growth and see that they can win in this American enterprise. We want to work with organizations that will step up and step out and say, oh, yes, we will. We're going to work to make Cleveland better. We want to work with our faith-based communities because as strengthened as they are, they need more strengthening so that, again, we can make this place a better place. We need to dispose and erase voter suppression. Unfortunately, in some 31 states, there's legislation on the books that look at voter suppression and want it. We must disallow that because, after all, we are citizens of this country and we deserve equal rights and civil rights. You've heard some of this before, but it's still here. And so we must stand together and make renewed commitments to do what's right. Poverty If you saw Congresswoman Fudge's article in the Plain Dealer this week, you saw that poverty is taking its hit on every sector of our community. And Mr. John Harrison is taking that leadership role for the Congresswoman to work and move it forward so that it can be alleviated. We're talking poverty in 2013. Where are we? And where are we going? Job opportunities. Yes, still need job opportunities. If each of you could spend not a day, but a couple of hours over on Stokes Boulevard and hear some of the complaints that come in from our citizens saying, NAACP, we need you because something is wrong as far as job opportunities are concerned. A young man called me not too long ago, and he said, Reverend, just talk to me. Because as long as you talk to me, you're going to stop me from taking my life or taking someone else's life, because I'm downhearted. I'm downtrodden. I need some help. I need a friend who can just say, I'll try to help you. So, Reverend, just keep talking. And when he said that about the gun, I talked to him as long as I could. And when we finished our conversation, he said, Reverend, I'm trying again and see where it would take me. Those that are in our private and public sector, of minorities and women that are working in these sectors, we need upward mobility opportunities. In the educational system, we need upward mobility opportunities. How diverse are our staffs in our boards of education? How diverse are our staffs in our public and private sector organizations? Because young people see what's there. Do you remember the commercial where the father caught his son in the room with marijuana, and he said, what are you doing with this? Where did you see this? And his dad, I saw you do it. We've got a lot to do in coalition building. We've got a lot to do to make absolutely sure that we can live with ourselves and look at, as Michael Jackson told us, the man in the mirror and the woman in the mirror, alleviating poverty, looking at fair housing. We're going to look at fair housing. We're going to look at it from a way in which it's never been looked at before. We're going to call out those that do not commit to fair housing. So let us come together with a divine dissatisfaction. Be dissatisfied with inequality. Be dissatisfied with education in our country, certainly in our city, until it reaches its zenith. Be dissatisfied with the tragic walls of separation. Be dissatisfied again with poverty. Be dissatisfied with slum landlords. Be dissatisfied with those that do not love. Be dissatisfied with those that are looking for personal aggrandizement or personal recognition. Be dissatisfied that those who will not lift a hand to help somebody as they pass along the way. Be dissatisfied that those that are always arguing and always have something bad to say and never anything good. Be dissatisfied until anger turns to love. Be dissatisfied until we can look at each other and say that you are my brother. You are my sister. No matter how old or how young we are, love must conquer all. There's a saying, and it is, adversity can engulf the individual, but not the group. And so let us work toward a coming together like we've never done before. Let's get some real positive fanfare for Cleveland throughout the community. Let us be a picture where people will look to see that I like that portrait. I like what I see about what's happening in Cleveland. I live by Proverbs 24:10 that says, adversity, if it is large, let us come together and make it small and do away with adversity. Let us work with our young people, and so they will see that we are in tune and in touch with them. We have a youth council at the NAACP that could use all the young professionals in this room to step up and mentor these young people and give them a sense of feeling well, a sense of being motivated to win and stimulated to succeed. That's what we're all about, and that's what we must be about if this world is going to be a better place. If I think in the day of adversity, our strength is small. Ladies and gentlemen, let us have huge strength, large strength, and set the tone and the example for everybody to see. Yes, you've heard similar messages before, but unfortunately, because of the world we live in, we've got to keep saying it. It does not get old. We got to keep saying it because of the fact of the few that live in a negative world, saying negative and bad things, can forget that and come aboard. Let us stand tall for each other. Let us do what thus saith the Lord and live our lives so that when we look in the mirror, we can say, oh yes, we have helped some people as we have passed along the way. Thank you.
Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we are listening to a Friday forum featuring Reverend Hilton Smith, the newly elected president of the Cleveland chapter of the NAACP. We will return to our speaker momentarily for the traditional City Club question and answer period. Please formulate your questions now and remember to be brief and to the point. We welcome all of you here and those listening on 90.3 WCPN, Idea Stream, WCLV, WTAM, or one of the many radio stations across the country. Our television broadcast partner is WVIZ PBS Idea Stream. Television broadcasts of the City Club are made possible by Cleveland State University and PNC. Our live webcast is supported by the University of Akron. Closed captioning of our programs is made possible by the Nordson Corporation. We welcome today at tables hosted by Cuyahoga County Community College and the Cleveland chapter of the NAACP guests at today's Friday Forum. Thank you for your support. Now we would like to return to our speaker for our traditional City Club question and answer period. We welcome questions from everyone, including guests. Holding the microphone today is Program Director Carrie Miller. May we have the first question, please?
Hilton, great talk, and congratulations on your election. My question, I belong to a breed that many people consider growingly irrelevant, namely the Republican Party. My question to you, sir, is what can and what should the Republican Party do locally, statewide, and nationally to make truly, to gain a much greater portion and percentage of the black vote in this country?
Mr. Akers, let us reason and pray together. It is courageous for you to stand and say that, because if you listen to some programs, many of your Republican cohorts have not embraced what you've just said. The best way to do that is to meet the situation head on, as you've stated. Meet it head on. Say that we're going to change our ways, and we're looking to change our ways, and we are going to look to provide job development. We're going to look to listen and hear the cultures of people. We're going to look at business opportunities. We need to look at a wholesale meeting whereby you bring folk together and let's just sit down and talk about it. That has not been done, not on a broad stream. I think that some folk are looking to talk to some folk in the minority community, but folk that have the same ideologies. And so that's what has to change. You got to talk to folk that have different ideologies and come together and reason together, and then we'll pray.
Reverend Smith, thank you so much for being here today. I know that one of the things that you want to do as part of during your tenure at the NAACP is to strengthen, strengthen the membership, and primarily it sounds like focusing on young professionals and young adults. What is the climate, the situation at the NAACP with young professionals, and how are you working to engage them in the organization to help strengthen the organization into the future?
Good question. We've got to market young people. We've got to advertise the NAACP and its history to them so that they can look at the history and decide, and they must decide, to come aboard, because the organization as it stands now, we cannot do it. We cannot move with a forward thrust without young people, young professionals that are willing to step up and step out and be in the program with us. We're looking for folk from all sectors of the community that will come in and say, yes, I can, yes, I will. I'm willing to work to alleviate any negatives that we see, and how can we do it together? And, you know, the NAACP was founded as an interracial organization. I had a couple of my white friends that say, now that you're there, Hilton, can we join? And I said, you could have joined all the time. You know what they said? Oh, we thought it was just for black people. And so we want to go back to that founding and absolutely make sure that everybody understands that people of goodwill initiated this movement.
First, I'm so glad to have you as the president of the NAACP Cleveland chapter. Congratulations.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
I want to talk about something that doesn't get talked about much when we discuss education. So many young parents have no idea how to raise their children to be successful in school and to be successful in life. A lot of times it's generational, where the mothers, their moms couldn't help them. So there's really no wisdom in the household. You have 26-year-old grandmothers today, and it's real hard. So I don't know, I'm just kind of throwing this out there. Do you see the NAACP playing any kind of role in helping our young parents? We do a lot with voting, but we don't really do a lot with just helping them be successful with their children. Do you see the NAACP having any kind of responsibility in that area?
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Absolutely. What I would like to see, and I hope we can garner enough support in the educational community, teachers and retired teachers, that will come and work with us, that know the problems with young parents. And if we could devise a forum or a series of forums where we could bring these young mothers and fathers together and talk to them about the real essence of education and allow them to become educated along with their children. In last week's Call-in Post, did anyone read that outstanding article on the young lady and her mother that graduated together? You ought to, I would ask you to speak with Attorney Sheila Wright. And every time I hear her speak about it, I get a tear in my eye. When we ask her, when we were interviewing her, and we asked her, who did you have the most effect on in your life? She said, my mother. She said, after I graduated from college, my mother decided that I pushed you to do it. I'm going to do it. And her mother is completing her education. I can give you another story. My mother dropped out of high school at 36, moved to New York, became a cosmetologist. And as she was doing cosmetology, she would hear women in that shop talking about the Wall Street Journal and all kinds of different current world events. She didn't know what they were talking about. So she came back to North Carolina. Said, I'm going back to high school. At the 11th grade, at 38 years old, she went back. Graduated at 40. Went on to college. Graduated at 44. Received her master's at 46 and became one of the top educators in the state of North Carolina. And so that's the kind of motivation that we need. A good friend of mine, Dick Barnett, who used to play for the New York Knicks, an outstanding basketball player throughout his college days at Tennessee State University, went on to play for the Knicks. And he used to hear Dave DeBusschere and Phil Jackson talking about stocks and bonds in the locker room. They weren't always talking about scoring points and playing defense. They talked about these things. Dick Barnett said that was a foreign, there were foreign words to him. He didn't know what they were talking about because he left Tennessee State after 4 years with sophomore hours. And so Dick Barnett went back to school. And he told me that story one day in my office in New York as I helped him to write his thesis for his PhD. Dr. Dick Barnett. So those are the kinds of things that we must do. And we must have folk like my mother, like Attorney Wright's mother, and like Dr. Barnett, who say, I'm going to make a difference. If we can put it out there for them, if they can pick up on it, Ms. Johnson, oh, what a greater place we'll have. The mother and the daughter that graduated together a few weeks ago had a similar story. And so those are the things that we must do. That's how professionals can help us to move this country to higher heights. Some of these folks, what they need and what they really need is someone to say, yes, you can. and put an arm around them and said, we'll be there with you. At our church one Sunday, we had a young man to come to our group. Deacon Kistner, you remember this. He was a burden to the community. He told us that in our community there were 111 churches. He knew what time that church started and said we can rob all the homes between 11 and 1. He knew that. And we said, my, with you knowing, you having that kind of knowledge, son, what can you do with it? And so we started asking him questions. His name was Mr. Nelson. And we asked him a question, Mr. Nelson this. He broke down and started crying. Deacon Kistner, what did he say? Nobody's ever called me mister in my life. And so it just takes not a whole lot. But all we have to do is to come around and say that we're going to help somebody as we pass along the way so that our living will not be in vain.
Good afternoon. My name is Leslie Huff, and I'm an attorney practicing in Cleveland and a board member of the
yes.
NAACP and a life member.
Yes.
I want to applaud the NAACP-Cleveland Branch for its coalition building. I know that it has, in the last several years, built coalitions with a variety of different groups. Most recently, you wrote a resolution in support of the gay games that are coming to Cleveland to help our economic situation here in Cleveland. There's a problem in Ohio, though. There are no protections for employment discrimination or housing discrimination statewide like there are for other minority groups. And on several occasions, the bills have come up and they've been passed only one time in the House but never in the Senate. Does the NAACP-Cleveland Branch have any plans to support the next round of bills that will try to address the frightening situation where one could be fired or not hired or not have a place to live simply because someone assumes that you're an LGBT person. And by LGBT, I mean lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you. We're all God's children. And all of God's children must be protected. Ms. Huff, we have a legal redress committee, and I certainly hope that you will join that committee under Judge Keenan, who will look at all kinds of things like that. And we want you to bring that to the forefront because there's so many issues that we have to deal with. And this is just one that we must deal with. We have to. And so we want to bring that to the legal redress committee and move forward with it and see what we can do to muster support and take care of God's children.
Reverend Hilton, thank you for coming here today. You have for a long time been a leader on economic inclusion in the construction industry. And the NAACP here in Cleveland has a proud tradition of having fought for economic inclusion on large public sector construction jobs. But there are lots of other industries in Northeast Ohio besides construction, and I'm wondering where the NAACP sees opportunities for improved economic inclusion going forward.
Thank you for that question. The co-chairs of our Economic Development Committee are Attorney Vanessa Whiting and Mr. Wendell Turner, who is a thriving businessman in the city. And what the question you just asked is their number one priority as a committee to look at in our community. We've come a long way, yet we have a long way to go. And I thought that when I was started out with my company some 41 years ago, that by now we wouldn't have to deal with that. But we got to, because it's still out there. There are some people in the community that are still saying no. And we've got to change that to yes. And I applaud the Economic Inclusion Commission. I believe Dick Pogue and Dennis Lafferty and others are looking at that very hard. And they've had some folk to say, no, I don't know. We're not ready yet. But when are we going to get ready? And so I think that that's something that's got to be foremost in our minds and in our hearts. You're absolutely right. Economic inclusion is still a tough word with a lot of folk, but we've got to do it. We've got to, again, look in the mirror and see that man and woman in the mirror and move forward.
Good afternoon, Brother Smith.
How are you, Brother Johnson?
I'm all right, sir. I graduated with my mother a number of years ago, and one of the things that was interesting about college and your parents is that there's always an interpretation difference. One of the things I find in the city of Cleveland that we have is that, per capita income, Clevelanders make $16,665 per capita. And what do you feel, or how do we bridge this gap of interpreting what's important for making life better in Cleveland? Because there's a tremendous gap between what someone at that level and someone who says in this room's level about how we make life better in Cleveland. So how do we cross that bridge?
First of all, Mr. Johnson, we've got to look at it and bring it forward. A lot of things that I've seen is that we talk about it in the back room, but we never bring it to the living room. And the living room in our community is to bring it out in public. And I'm going to get back to you, but let me say this. This whole thing on poverty. I've spoken to Al Ratner. He's working on the whole poverty situation. Congresswoman Fudge is bringing it to light. And these are things that people say, yeah, we know about it, Barry. We know about it, but I don't know. And so it's coming to light. And from what you just asked, Mr. Johnson, yes, we have to bring that to light. Those statistics that you just stated, I'm not so sure that too many people know them. And so we've got to put it on the front burner because that can be devastating in our community, certainly to young people who are looking and those that have been unemployed and seeking employment. We've got to bring all of this to the forefront. And I certainly hope that our board, and I believe that our board, will bring all of these matters to the forefront so that we can have forums on this, so that we can bring it to the community at large and take care of our business. That's 16,000?
16,665.
Wow. How many of us in the room knew that? We maybe knew it was low, but maybe not that low. So yes, we have to bring all of that to the forefront.
The Voting Rights Act mandated the creation of majority-minority districts. That has had the effect nationally of concentrating the black vote in a relatively few congressional districts. The question was asked earlier, how do you get Republicans to listen to the problems of the black community? I would suggest that if the black vote were allocated more fairly among the various congressional districts, politicians listen to the people who vote, and a very small percentage in a number of districts would make a lot more people more sensitive to those demands. So my question is, on the whole, in your view, has the creation of the majority-minority district been of real benefit to the community by creating leaders, very visible leaders like Congressman Stokes, or has it really diminished the influence of the black community?
Well, that's a highly political question. I wish the congressman was here to answer that. Yeah. Is this thing about over? Well, I think one of the things that has come about, as far as our Republican brothers and sisters have seen, is that they lost a lot of ground in the last election. And certainly, someone has to come to the realization, as Bruce has, to say we got to take another look at this. Yes, we were able to bring Congressman Stokes in, and because of what you said, many of the Congressional Black Caucus members came into practice, came into being. But something had to be done to bring some kind of proactiveness as far as the election of minorities to political offices. Now, if things were right, and we all looked into the mirror, your question would be answered. But unfortunately, we all have not, and it's time that we do. And so I hope we have some time to talk about this. But thank you. I was waiting for your question.
Reverend Smith, I'd like to know, do you see or perceive the NAACP working with the Cleveland Public School System to enhance the graduation rate, and in that process ensuring that those students are either college ready, work ready, training ready? I know you stated the statistics, and I'm carrying it a step further than the parents, because once we get those students in school, how can we work together in that process?
Well, first of all, I am happy to say that the NAACP was a major backer of Levy 107. And we worked with the mayor and the group of concerned citizens to get that issue passed. Ms. Marcia McCoy worked day and night. Mr. Terry Butler was a part of the coalition, and so many of us. In fact, Reverend Cavanagh brought the resolution to a vote at an NAACP meeting that we worked with Levy 107. So certainly we've invested in our children. As I mentioned earlier, we have a youth council that's second to none. We have a young man that heads our youth council, Mr. Orr, that's a junior at Solon High School. And at our installation service, you should have heard him speak if you were there. And he talked about his vision for his future. And in a way, he was talking about all of our children. And we heard that vision. And our goal is to work with the Cleveland School District and other school districts. We cannot forget the Heights Highs and the Brush Highs and the Warrensville Highs and Chanel, Bedford, Euclid. There are a whole lot of work for us to do to bring this thing together, but certainly Cleveland is at the foremost of our minds.
Reverend Smith, one last question. Just to follow on, we've been talking, there's been a lot of talk in the last election, and now as we move forward after the centennial or the census in the last couple of years, about the redistricting that's going to be taking place in Ohio. And how do minority communities, and specifically what is the NAACP doing to support the efforts of making sure that that's a fair and equal process and that the minority voices are heard in the redistricting that will be taking place? That's our job.
As a civil rights organization, that's our job to do so. And we not only want to tackle this by ourselves, but we work with other organizations to come together, work with the Commissioner Leonard Jacksons of the world to make absolutely sure that, that we bring all of this to the forefront. That is our job, to make sure that equal opportunities stand tall. Thank you.
Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we have been listening to a Friday forum featuring Reverend Hilton Smith, the newly elected president of the NAACP-Cleveland chapter. Thank you, Reverend Smith. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This forum is now adjourned.
For information on upcoming speakers or for podcasts of the City Club, go to cityclub.org.
PNC is proud to support the presentation of this City Club of Cleveland Friday Forum on WVIZ PBS.
Additional support comes from Cleveland State University. Support for closed caption transcripts of City Club forums is provided by the Nordson Corporation Foundation.